All right, let's dive right into this explainer and untangle what is honestly an absolutely gripping 30-year-old geopolitical mystery. We're looking at the harrowing story of British Airways Flight 149. Now, for decades, this specific flight was completely shrouded in government denials, classified documents, and these dark whispers of covert military operations. But thanks to some recently declassified files and just relentless investigative work, the truth is finally coming to light. So picture this. It's the evening of August 1st, 1990. 385 people, passengers and crew from all over the world, board a Boeing 747 in London. They're expecting a perfectly routine, everyday journey to Kuala Lumpur. But as these totally unaware passengers settle in for the long flight ahead, there are frantic midnight calls taking place in the absolute highest offices of Whitehall in London. Because at that very moment, Saddam Hussein's Iraqi forces were actively invading Kuwait, and this civilian passenger jet was flying directly into the crossfire.
Section 1. The ill-fated flight, London to Kuwait.
To understand how on earth this happened, we really need to look at the aircraft itself and the exact timeline. Our story kicks off with the departure of a Boeing 747, a plane known as Coniston Water. The command crew, led by Captain Richard Brunier, was prepping for that first leg from London to Kuwait City. But right off the bat, there's a problem. The flight was delayed on the tarmac at Heathrow for nearly 2 hours. Officially, British Airways blamed a mechanical fault with the auxiliary power unit. But here is the absolute crucial piece of the puzzle. On the very morning of August 1st, the British Embassy in Kuwait had explicitly warned that any flights arriving after that day were highly inadvisable. Why? Because of massive Iraqi troop buildups right on the border. Yet, despite that glaring red flag, the flight was cleared for dispatch.
So Coniston Water finally takes off at 18:04 GMT. And while that plane is in the air, the geopolitical crisis totally explodes. At 2200 GMT, Iraqi forces actually cross the border. Then right at midnight, the British ambassador in Kuwait calls the duty clerk at the Foreign Office in London, explicitly warning that an invasion is actively underway. Now, BA-149 didn't touch down in Kuwait City until 0113 GMT. This means the UK government had exactly 73 minutes, an hour and 13 minutes of advance warning to contact air traffic control and stop this plane from landing in an active, literal war zone. And they didn't.
Part 2. The Human Shields, Hostages of War.
That single failure to act, it changed the lives of 385 people forever. Because just 45 minutes after the plane touched down, the airport was literally bombed and overrun by Iraqi forces. The passengers and crew were violently pulled out of the terminal and thrust straight into captivity. And the reality of their capture was just brutal. They were held for up to 5 months. Saddam Hussein's military systematically moved them around, from hotels to strategic military and industrial sites, basically to deter Western military bombing. They quite literally became human shields. During this time, these hostages endured horrific abuse. We're talking starvation, beatings, sexual assaults, and even mock executions. Now, the women and children were eventually released toward the end of August, but many of the men, they were held all the way until December.
So, the really crucial thing to remember here is that these aren't just cold statistics of war. These are real people who felt completely, utterly abandoned by the very authorities they trusted to keep them safe. Passenger Barry Manners, I think, summarized this profound sense of betrayal perfectly when he said, "We were not treated as citizens, but as expendable pawns for commercial and political gain." They didn't just feel like victims of a hostile foreign army, they felt like victims of their own government's calculated indifference.
And the trauma inflicted here really spared no one, not even the kids. Passenger Jennifer Chappell was just 12 years old when that plane landed. She actually witnessed Iraqi tanks driving right over fleeing civilian cars. It's an ordeal that abruptly robbed her of her childhood and left her battling severe nightmares and psychological distress for over a decade. I mean, this is the real human cost of the decision to let BA-149 land.
Section 3. The Trojan Horse, a secret mission?
Which brings us to probably the most pressing question of this entire explainer. If the government knew the invasion was happening, we have to look really forensically at why this plane wasn't diverted. Like, was it just a massive bureaucratic failure, or was it a Trojan horse? Well, as we look at the evidence gathered by investigative journalists and legal teams over the years, the answer might actually lie in that initial 2-hour delay back at London Heathrow. Remember, that was officially blamed on a mechanical fault, but eyewitnesses, they tell a very different story.
Get this. Multiple passengers reported seeing a pretty fierce argument between crew members out on the tarmac regarding the safety of the flight, and during this delay, a mysterious group of around 9 to 12 athletic, very military-looking men boarded the aircraft late. Furthermore, passengers noted that immediately upon landing in Kuwait, like before the airport was even secured by the Iraqis, these specific men quickly disembarked and just vanished into the war zone. This sparked massive allegations that the flight was purposely delayed and used for a black ops mission. And those allegations specifically point to a highly secretive group known as the Increment. Basically, this is a rumored cadre of MI6 intelligence officers and UK Special Forces personnel used for entirely off-the-books, deniable operations. The prevailing theory, which is actually supported by Kuwaiti resistance claims of Western commandos operating in the city on day one, is that BA-149 was used as civilian cover to insert this specific intelligence gathering team into Kuwait right as the invasion kicked off. Talk about a calculated yet completely devastating risk.
Section 4. A 30-year cover-up, suppressing the truth.
Now, obviously, if a government uses a civilian airliner for a covert military drop, admitting it would be an absolute political and legal catastrophe. And that perfectly illustrates the stark juxtaposition we see right here. For 3 decades, the official stance of both British Airways and the UK government was simply, we didn't know about the invasion until it was too late. But the reality, finally exposed by the 2021 National Archives releases, proves they absolutely knew, without a doubt. They had over an hour to divert that plane.
Those declassified files show us exactly where that midnight warning call from the ambassador went. The Foreign Office resident clerk immediately disseminated the warning to 10 Downing Street, the Ministry of Defense, the Cabinet Office, and MI6. But take a close look at the bottom of this list. The information was deliberately withheld from British Airways. The actual airline flying a plane packed full of civilians into a literal war zone was kept entirely in the dark by the intelligence and defense apparatus. Crazy, right?
It literally took until November 2021 for the government to finally own up to this. Then Foreign Secretary Liz Truss actually stood before Parliament and issued this apology, acknowledging that the failure to disclose the ambassador's call was just unacceptable. But why the long secret? Well, internal memos from the 1990s, which were also released in the archives, revealed that the truth was suppressed for decades, specifically because officials were terrified of the massive compensation claims the government would face if their system failure became public knowledge.
Section 5. The fight for justice. Accountability today.
And that decades-long fear of paying compensation brings us right to the present day. See, the legal aftermath of this flight has been incredibly uneven. Back in the late 1990s, French passengers actually successfully sued and won millions in damages in French courts. British passengers, on the other hand, had their cases totally dismissed by the House of Lords due to these strict interpretations of international aviation treaties, essentially leaving them with nothing. But now, armed with the 2021 declassified evidence proving the government lied, a massive multinational legal action is finally taking the UK government and British Airways to the High Court in London.
£170,000. That is the estimated average compensation claim per hostage currently being sought. It's a figure that's meant to address the extreme physical and psychiatric harm they had to endure, the loss of their property, and of course, the aggravated damages resulting from 30 years of government deception and denial.
But what you should really take away from this is that for the victims, this is about so much more than just a financial payout. As Matthew Jury, the managing partner leading this legal charge, states, there must be closure and accountability to erase this shameful stain on the UK's conscience. I mean, after being lied to for 30 years, the survivors are fighting for real vindication. They want the truth fully adjudicated in a court of law, proving once and for all that they were used as disposable collateral.
Which leaves us with this final, really lingering thought. When governments use their own citizens as expendable collateral for secret military operations, and then spend decades covering it up, what is the true price of accountability? It's a profound question that the passengers of Flight 149 have been agonizing over for more than 30 years now. And very soon, in a London courtroom, they might finally get their answer.
E.O.T.H. Investigations, formerly Echoes of the Horizon, where every flight leaves an echo behind.